Hello, it's Amy, and I'm back again to talk more about the A. Edward Newton collection of rare books and manuscripts that was sold at auction upon his death in 1941 in New York. And I have here just a slim little book. See, yeah, just a slim little book. And you'll see this isn't one that I have showed before, but this is one that I purchased late last year before I got the 3 volumes of the catalog. And this is pretty much an announcement of the auction and an announcement of the catalog's impending publication. And it's really neat because we have a reproduction of A. Edward Newton's Oak Knoll Ex Libris bookplate, just tipped into the cover of this little book. And it's in pretty good condition. It's a little bit browned and yellowed in some spots, but for the most part, someone took very good care of it. It actually arrived in very crumbly and yellowed archival paper that someone had used as a cover. And so that's probably why it's in such good condition. I threw out that archival paper just because it was completely falling to pieces in my hands. And I may try to find some new paper to wrap it in just to keep it safe because I am a little bit worried about this reproduction bookplate getting damaged just because, you know, it's rubbing against other books and whatnot. And so I've been storing it at the end of a shelf so that no other books are coming directly into contact with the cover. And so you can see we've got the title, we've got the book plate, we've got the note here that it's for public sale at the Park Burnett Galleries Incorporated, 30 East 57th Street, New York. And we'll open this up. Nothing really going on the end papers here. It's a very nice paper. It almost makes me wonder if it's linen paper or something just because of the texture. But that would be kind of an odd choice for a book in the 1940s. But it could be. It's just these end papers. And then the other paper feels much more like normal paper of that era. But we have our title page here, the rare books and manuscripts collected by the late A. Edward Newton, public sale, and the dates of the auctions. So part 1, April 16th, 17th, and 18th. Part 2, May 14th, 15th, and 16th. And when this was published, the dates for part 3 were yet to be announced. And the auction was by the order of E. Swift Newton and Brandon Beringer, executors. And I apologize if you're hearing truck horns in the distance. That is a problem here at the moment. We've got fairly significant protest in the downtown of Ottawa here. Anti-vaccine mandates, anti-public health mandates, that sort of thing. I won't comment too much on that. I'm just hoping they all clear out by Monday or Tuesday because it does significantly impact my ability to leave this apartment and do much of anything. But yeah, if you hear noise in the background, that's what that is. So 1941, and we have a little note here on the copyright page. It gives us pleasure to use on the cover of this brochure a copy of A. Edward Newton's bookplate, the original of which was designed in 1909 by his old Johnsonian friend, Charles G. Osgood, Princeton, New Jersey. Copyright 1941, first edition, E. Swift Newton, printed in the USA. And we have an introduction here, which I'm going to read aloud to you. I'll just position myself differently behind the camera so I'm not reading sideways. It's much easier to flip the pages from the side, but a lot easier to actually read from the book if I'm standing directly overhead. So the introduction. And this is an introduction by E. Swift Newton, who is mentioned here. And so this is the son of A. Edward Newton. And he says, "Not until after father's death did I realize that on the day he came to me and said, "Swift, I'm going to make you an executor of my estate," he had paid me a great compliment and at the same time had given me a great responsibility. Due to his forethought and business acumen, the responsibility did not involve the question of inheritance taxes, because they were well provided for. But Father did, without saying, entrust to me the disposal of his library. I am not a bookman, but it takes less than a teaspoonful of imagination to realize that the library created by my father is one of today's outstanding collections, due not only to its intrinsic value of the books, but also the personality of A. Edward Newton and to his influence in the book world. Should the library be sold en bloc? Should it be sold piecemeal? Or should it be sold by auction? Suggestions were made which led to each of these ideas. For the first time in my life, I began to feel that I was a man of importance. My mail and office were flooded with suggestions as to how the Newton Library should be disposed of. Then I remembered distinctly that on occasions Father had stated he would like his library sold at auction to give other collectors the opportunity of enjoying the fun of the chase. Shortly after my first visit to the Park Burnett Galleries, where I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Hiram H. Park, President, and Mr. Arthur Swan, Vice President in charge of the book department, I realized that they were the answer to my problem. Mr. Park struck me as an auctioneer with a conscience as well as an able executive. And although he did not know it, I had lived with Mr. Swan, so to speak, for years, having heard Father mention him frequently, and in only the highest and most affectionate terms. Some months ago, in discussing the auction sale with my mother, I stated that we wanted to produce the greatest book catalogue that had ever been issued as a memorial to AEN. In the wisdom of her years, she said, "My boy, book catalogues have been published for hundreds of years, and so that is going to be hard to do. Have you ever looked at any catalogues?" I replied, "No, and frankly, I don't intend to. The library built by Father is different, and because of that difference, it is up to us to inject a new note into the catalogue for the sale. That is our goal. Whether or not these ambitions and hopes will be fully realized, the plans contain ample promise. As the son, speaking for the family, I could not but be astonished and deeply touched by the editorials and comments published in the press at the time of Father's death. Restricted by space, we can reprint herein only a few of the many appreciations which appeared in London, New York, Boston, and Philadelphia newspapers, and which reflect so widely the esteem to which he was held. When the Library of Congress published this Christmas a brochure which was written by 6 of his most intimate friends, with a preface by Archibald MacLeish, the librarian, and an epilogue by Arthur A. Houghton, Jr., the curator of the Rare Book Department, it seemed as if the Newton cup were overflowing. Of necessity, there is much Newtonia at hand that cannot be suitably included in the catalogue now nearly ready for distribution. With this in mind, and feeling that advance interest in the plans of sale would make a prospectus valuable and desirable, this brochure has been compiled. The pleasure of telling about the collection has been left to Mr. Swan. Dates of the 3 parts of the sale and other pertinent facts also appear herein. There is little more that can be done at this time. The die is cast, the sale is on. In closing, it seems fitting to refer back to one evening spent with my mother at Oak Knoll, when she said, "Swift, have you ever seen your father's essay, When My Ship Comes In, written at the age of 14? I had to acknowledge that I never had. Reading it for the first time, when Father had lived his life to the end, I became sharply aware of the uncanny parallel between the young boy's vision of his future and what life had actually been for him. It seems fitting, therefore, to produce on one of the following pages that remarkable little essay." And it's signed E. Swift Newton. And so also in this volume we have a number of obituaries reproduced. We have an essay on the age of Newton. We have a facsimile of that composition mentioned at the age of 14. Another piece on an American book collector. And I should note that The Age of Newton is by fellow book collector Rosenbach. This one is by director of the Clements Library at the University of Michigan. We have several more tributes here. Gabriel Wells, Arthur Swan, and then a description of the catalogs and what's going to be in each of those catalogs. And I, of course, have all 3 volumes of that catalog. There's an introduction. There's an introduction written by Newton to another catalog from the Carolyn Wells sale in 1923, which says some lovely things about Whitman and rare books. And that's pretty much it. And this is from the Maynard Printing Corporation in New York. And so that is kind of a companion piece to the 3 volumes of the catalog. And I will leave it at that.